Hello, and welcome to the Coaches Corner here at the Endurance Lab. My name is Jason Flores. I'm one of the coaches from the Endurance Lab, and I'm joined today by Ian and Taya. We've got a lot of things going on here at the Endurance Lab, and we just want to take an opportunity once a week to bring you guys what's going on and what's going on really just in cycling, and then also answer some of those questions that you had. So we're going to start off with a question for the coaches and a little bit of the topics that are happening today. And my question is, what was the last thing that was in your bottle on the last workout? So I'll start with Taya. Good morning to you, first of all, of course, and tell us what was your last, I guess, solution or drink in your last hydration bottle, Taya?
Good morning, everyone. I love that these questions are not given to us ahead of time. It's an off the cuff. It's great. The last thing that was in my bottle in my last workout was water. I did a hour and a half intense workout, but I have recently changed the way I hydrate during these hard rides indoors. I just make sure I'm getting enough salt in my diet, and so in my bottle it's really just water.
That works. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But before that, we'll go over to Ian. I know he just got in from a run, so tell us about the run and what was in the bottle.
No, so this was a short run. It was only about 6 miles, so I didn't use a bottle for this. But for my last workout, that real workout that I had a bottle was Wednesday. I did a little over about 13.25 miles, and I ran the half marathon of it really hard. So I had just a light bit of scratch labs in my bottle because I was running on the treadmill and sweating an awful lot and needed just a little bit of salt.
Very nice, very nice. So yeah, my last workout was a 3-hour grinder. So I like to do a little bit of a homemade hydration mix that I have here. I do a little bit of maple syrup, just about 20 grams in a little short bottle. I'll do 3 of those, about 1 an hour, and just about a couple, about 300 grams of salt. So just about a pinch of salt, or a little smidgen, I guess you could call it if you were measuring. So, but great. Let's get on to our topics today here in the Coaches Corner. We had a really great week this week.
I'm sorry, Jason, did you say 300? Did you say 300 grams of salt?
Yeah, milligrams. Excuse me. You're right. 300 grams. I would be.
300 grams is a little bit more than a pinch.
Yeah, that's a little bit more than a smidgen or a pinch, isn't it? Huh? Yeah, good catch there. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about this week in the lab. Let's start off with the workouts that we did. So we can pull up the training peaks here and kind of go over that. We had some really challenging workouts this week as we go through. We have really short periods during this lab, this performance lab. So the intensity goes up quite quick to get our fitness up. So let me toss this over to our skills section with Taya, and to talk a little bit about the 4 workouts that we really focused on this week.
So we had over-unders, and if you noticed, if you have done the previous lab, the base lab before this one, you probably noticed that the over-unders in that lab were, the overs were not as high and the unders were a little bit lower. So we're bringing, again, as Jason mentioned, the intensity up here. The over-unders this time had a catch. So we did basically 3 12-minute blocks, but the middle block had cadence changes in it. And so we were alternating between high cadence for the overs that were a minute long and low cadence for the unders that were about 2 minutes long. And we'll talk a little bit more about cadence changes and why that's important to do. So that was something that was fairly new for a lot of our lab participants. It brings in a new challenge in terms of changing your gear and finding the appropriate cadence that you need to aim for. Then we had the Vo2 wraps. That, again, a little bit of a different Vo2 workout in that the intervals were shorter, but they were higher intensity. And there were lots of them, hence the name. Then we did the 414 threshold. This is pure, solid, simple, straightforward, but very effective threshold work, 4 minutes at 105% of FTP. And we closed the week with the longer ride with 10-minute blocks of tempo in here to build that endurance and continue to build it.
Yeah, with the 4 workouts, well, we haven't hit kind of the weekend here with everyone doing the threshold and the tempo, but the intensity of the beginning and the middle of this week, we definitely are hearing it from the riders in the forum, and the Vo2 is something that we haven't seen a lot of in our workout protocols. So now having it in there, people are really able to kind of give it a rip and get a good understanding of where that level is and what they're able to do. So
yeah, there's some pretty good descriptive. There's some pretty good descriptive terms of it. I think it was dry heaving, dying, and vomiting. But I believe that's just a little bit of drama.
Yeah, a little bit. But when you actually get to that all-out effort, because a lot of times the heart rate doesn't match, and really even the targets when there's short intervals, like at the end of the reps, really you're just putting it down, to the pedal. You know what I mean? To get that awesome stimulation. Yeah. So what do we have going in the multi-sport world?
So the multi-sport world was a fun week. We had 2 different events in the swim, and then on the run, we were still just kind of getting some endurance and a little bit of tempo work. But our swim was the most important this week. If we first one we had was a 20 by 50, and we put in there a little bit of ramping up the speed and then going fast. So there was one set where it was building, which is kind of like you get faster through the 50. Another one you just got faster between the reps. And the idea behind that is starting to learn how to catch more water and increase your speed by pulling water harder and catching more water by just turning your arms faster and losing form. What you'll see a lot of times is people start windmilling around and thrashing and look like they've been attacked by a shark or they're drowning. And it's just them trying to go faster and they end up going slower. And swimming is all about, smooth as fast, not fast as fast. And I know Tea's son can talk for days about that, about people who just wildly flail their arms and go nowhere. And then the other one we worked on was about how to kind of create some gears in the pool. So, everyone knows in biking and running, different pacing, or I like to call them your gears for your car, like you're on a car. And we did 20 by 100 progressive. So it was 20 by 100 in sets of 4, 5 times through. And there's no rest actually in the entire 2000. There's no rest, but it was a slow 100, a moderate 100, a moderate hard 100, and a hard 100. Then you went back to slow, and you had to recover at that active, at that slower pace. And one of the reasons we do this is 1, teaching you how to go different speeds, and then 2 is how to recover at pace, at a lighter pace. So it's very similar to what we do on the bike with the floor workouts. This is the same in the swim on a triathlon when you have to go around somebody, or you have to get around a buoy, or you're in the first part of the swim, which is your aqua mixed martial arts battle. You need to be able to get through that and then slow down a little bit and recover, because unfortunately in most tries, there's not a place to stop and check your watch and get your, recover a little bit, maybe take a drink in the middle of the ocean or the lake. So this is a good one for that.
So for the workouts that they're doing in the pool, Ian, they also have paired runs on the same day on the schedule, or are these workouts that are kind of more focused where they're really focusing on the swim?
No, these can be moved around a little bit, but I have the runs and swims on different days, so they can be paired with a bike workout depending on what the bike workout is.
Gotcha.
Obviously, if you're doing a hard run, you probably don't want a hard bike that day.
Makes sense.
You can get away with it on the swim and the bike to a certain extent, but I would definitely not recommend doing Vo2 max intervals on the bike and then doing sprint work in the pool. So it's just a matter of combining your hard efforts and your easy efforts and mixing and matching around the schedule.
Absolutely. And then with the strength workouts this week, we did combination exercises, was it?
Yeah, combination exercises and continuous core. Or no, it was combination exercises.
Strength,
and those are a lot of fun because those are it's a constant pressure and work, and you have to really just get through that initial fatigue that you're going to feel, and it's very difficult at first. That probably that middle section of it, because you're starting to fatigue, but you got to get through that, because this is where if you can tax your core during this workout, which is obviously much harder than you're going to have taxing your core in a hard race or a run, but you can then take this and translate it directly over to that late race stability when you're trying to put in efforts.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that core fatigue that you're getting as you're doing, each of the 3 sets definitely can get that core activated and feeling, and it's just hard. And one of the things, if you guys haven't caught the variations video or the short videos that I've been putting together to help people kind of understand the different ways you could do each of the exercises, you need to scale it. And I always remind everybody, take your time. Take your time. If you've watched any of Ian's full videos, Ian's like a machine and kind of can go through it. And it's awesome to watch one of those videos and have him go through the workout and do it with him. But each person's going to be different. So just reminding everyone, take your time with it. You can do the movements and get through it and choose the variation and just go with that. We've got a starting point for you there. We just need to go from there. So that's great. Let's jump into some hot topics in the lab. We're going to go back to Taya here. We had mentioned a little bit about the cadence changes. You definitely are, getting the layers of the endurance lab here with the different parts of the workouts that we're adding, where we're not just doing power targets, but in fact, we are having you experience what it's like to have high cadence, low cadence with low power, or the vice versa. So let's talk a little bit about that, Taya, and the cadence and a couple other things here.
So I guess the question is, why do we do it? Why do we throw in these different cadences within the same workout and within the same interval? Is it to make it fancy so that people think that these workouts are fancy? Not really. But really, no. If you think about it, cadence is very often overlooked by cyclists and by a lot of the training plans that are out there. I can speak from experience. I spent the first couple of years of my training life in cycling without doing much, if any, cadence work. And it was something that I started doing. Once I started doing, a light bulb went off and things started to change for me, and I became so much more efficient on the road. So let's go through a couple of reasons why we do these cadence changes within the workout. Pedaling efficiency is one that we talk about quite a bit in the lab here, and especially when we have the cadence drills. We mentioned the pedaling efficiency comes from learning, having that neuromuscular connection, muscle-brain connection to move your legs faster or lower at a lower cadence and not having dead spots. So that's why we have the drills as some of the workouts, but also the reason why we have it within the workout. The other reason for having cadence changes is you can use your cadence to accelerate without having to increase power. So you can maintain the same power and gain momentum and accelerate when you're out on the road by increasing your cadence. You can also use the acceleration increasing power. And when you do that at high cadence, you are avoiding getting too much of that lactic acid buildup in your legs. So you're effectively clearing it faster. Then we move to the low cadence. That one is important for power development. That one is important to use also when you are climbing. Or another example might be you're on a flat road in a group and you use the high cadence to absorb the surges within the group without having to bring your power up too much. And then you drop to lower cadence to maintain that speed. And so those are things that we do in the workouts that after a while, once you take that out and you're on a free ride, you use it almost automatically, because it's not like you're telling yourself out in the middle of a group ride, well, now I'm going to drop to my low cadence and high cadence and do this and do that. It becomes automatic after a while because you're building that connection in your brain and your muscles.
One of the things on that too, which is really important, and I think a lot of people forget to consider, and you mentioned it spot on, is the being able to adjust your power just by changing your cadence. Yeah. When you're in a race or a hard ride or a group ride, every time you shift, you're introducing the opportunity for a mechanical failure. So
this is true.
It's just the way it is. And so if you can manage your cadence to be able to respond to moves or attacks or just close gaps and settle back in without having to shift, you're better off. Obviously, if it's a real attack or real move where you have to cross a big gap because you let them get away at the stoplight, then you're going to have to shift. But if you learn to manage your cadence, you can make sure you're shifting when the tension is the least amount you need to put on the pedals and on the drivetrain.
That's right. Same for slowing down. Yeah. If the group is slowing down, you can, without stop pedaling and coasting, right? Because once you coast, then you have to, and you start to have to pedal again, Those are micro surges that add up and make you more tired without you even realizing. You're like, well, but I was coasting. Why am I getting tired on this group ride? And again, it's because you stop pedaling altogether, and then now you have to respond to those micro surges all the time.
Yeah, and it almost goes back to that adage about, oh, cadence should always be 90. Cadence should be 90 plus, and that sort of thing. And I think it's important to understand that you have to have different cadences in the bag. And if in fact you are, on the lower of the cadence side, 80, less than 80, you just need to build that efficiency at the higher level so that you can use that as we go through, to slow down or to speed up. And a lot of times in situations when everyone is on the rivet, that rider that is, you hear the free wheel go and they're trying to, stop pedaling, that they may be kind of on the edge and they may be going out the back any moment at this time because they're looking for anything to get a little bit of rest. But in fact, if you do lower your cadence exactly as Tia has described here, you can keep the pedaling going, stay in the group, decrease the amount of energy that you're putting in, and then not lead off that you're trying to get off the pedals.
Yeah, and the other part of that too is that perfect cadence, so to speak, is perfect at a certain point in time in the race. So we were working on that in skills and drills this week, and most people have found that if you ride at 80 to 85 in a time when you're expecting attacks or accelerations, then that 80 to 85 gives you the most range to start from. If you're already pedaling at 90, look, most people can't hold 105 RPMs for a very long time. It's not very efficient. Yeah. And if you're down at 70, you can't respond quickly. So, that 90 is perfect when you're more in that steady state riding, where there's not going to be a lot of accelerations or attacks, and you need to be the most efficient. But that's not always the most responsive. So that's why this cadence work is really important. You start learning how to work the bike.
Yeah. In skills and drills, Ian, how low did you guys end up going with them? Well, tell us a little bit about what you did at skills and drills, and then I wanted to know how low did you guys practice getting down in the wrong gear, is essentially.
Yeah, so we this last week on skills and drills, we covered just how to respond to attacks or surges in the group by using your cadence, and what cadence and gearing actually, and we were more focused on the gearing, but what gearing allowed you to respond better based on the cadences we were using. And we went all the way down to 65 to 70, and we worked a little bit out of the saddle, and we also went up to well north of 100. So I wanted everyone to get that opportunity to see if you're already pedaling at 100, your ability to accelerate and hold that accelerated power is pretty low. And likewise, if you're down at that 65 to 70, your ability to accelerate quickly is not there, and it's not very stable. Whereas that 80, like I said, that 80 to 85, most people found somewhere around there was the best to be able to accelerate and be able to hold it. So we were starting off at 2.0 watts per kilogram, and then we were doing our accelerations from there upwards to 4 to 5, and then later in the class we did as hard as you wanted to accelerate, but then settling back down.
Very interesting. Yeah, definitely a great ride. I did catch it on live stream, but yeah, having riders do that in practice is definitely great. All right, Tia, I know we had a little bit about Vo2 intervals as well.
Yes, so Vo2, we started again in this lab, and we have a lot of comments from our participants mentioning how the Vo2 work this week was a mental battle. Yeah. We had 90-second intervals at 125% of FTP, and those are hard intervals. They are really hard. So a lot of comments came up on, it was a mental battle. It was hard to keep it up. Any tips that, we might be able to use for this? So Vo2, by definition, is work above threshold, and it's hard. And there are things that you can do to help you through it. Breathing, of course, everybody talks about breathing. And I just remember thinking to myself, I can't breathe. I can't even think about breathing. What are you talking about? No, I'm desperate here. It gets better over time. The more you do this kind of work, the better you're able to manage it. Your body gets more used to it, of course. And with that, you get more of that mental confidence that you're able to complete the interval. But exhales are important. Just focus on long exhales during those. And there are a couple of mental tips here. The 5-to-1 technique that Nate Last brought in an interesting article that we posted to the forum is a good one to look at. So it's basically some visualization and things to get your mind off of how hard your heart is beating that will help you get through it. But really working through it over time, by the end of this lab, I promise you, you're going to be so much better at VO2, and VO2 will be your friend. So stick to it. The workouts that we have here, some are based on W prime. W prime is a concept coined by, is the result of the work of Dr. Skiba. I'll post a link to the forum to explain what that is. But simply put, he did research on how much work a person can do above their critical power, which can be correlated to threshold. It's your tank, if you will. How much do you have in a tank? And the theory says that you have a limited amount and you empty it, but you can recover faster if you drop your power completely between intervals. So when you see the workouts in the lab that take you to spin-ups and quick reps of 20 seconds on, 20 off, you go super hard for those seconds and then you take the power down completely and then you go again and again and again. That is what we're talking about, is that W prime in terms of flooding your legs with lactate, but then you recover faster because you're going all the way down. But you're at the same time, as the workout goes on, you are emptying your tank. So when you see these workouts in the lab that have a lot of repetition, 3 sets of them, expect that by the end, by that third set, you are pretty wear out. You're very fatigued. And that's the goal. If you're failing all the way towards the end, you have achieved the goal of the workout. We want you to empty your legs completely. But that's what's gonna make you even better at VO2 over time. You're gonna build that up. So that's one type of workout that you will see in the lab. The other type of VO2 workout you will see is when you use VO2 at the beginning of the interval, and let's say it's a minute or a minute and a half, and then you have to hold, let's say, sweet spot. And you will see that on the time trials type workouts. And then the third way that we use VO2 is at the end. So you are already doing some work, and then you have to use that sweet spot or threshold as a springboard to go into a VO2 interval. So all of those are important because you will need them out, again, part of your bag of tricks when you go out on the road, because you will encounter all different scenarios.
Absolutely. We essentially, with these workouts that Taya has described here, the 3 different types and kind of the understanding of the fuel tank, I guess you could call it, with the W prime that she mentioned. It's a pretty big term. It's a pretty broad topic, but she definitely brought it to concise information. So go back and listen to the beginning of that as she explained that. But really, just wanting to make sure that we can build you guys, the riders here in the lab, to be able to do stacked work on top of each other and be able to recover at a high level is important. And it allows you to get a feeling for that deep level of fatigue, because a lot of times workouts will allow for complete recovery. If you notice, a lot of our workouts now, as we get into the performance section and kind of building our strengths, you'll find that the recovery is not, in fact, full recovery. A lot of times, especially in those weekend workouts. So get a good feeling for that. It will allow you to really perform when you do get outdoors, when you do get in that group ride, to be able to perform at that time. So,
and also very quickly, when you look at these quick spin-ups in VO2, 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off, the other thing that we're doing here is tricking your body. We're tricking your body into thinking it is doing hard work for the whole interval.
That's right.
So it has the same physiological effect of working pretty hard. And that's why sometimes you see a low TSS in theory for a VO2 workout, but at the end of it, you're completely spent.
Right. High level of fatigue at the end.
Yeah.
So with that, and talking about different workouts, I actually got a chance to do the VO2 workout outdoors with reps. I found a good place to do it. So it was only about, it was 90 seconds if I remember, and then some short ones at the end. So I found a nice little climb that I was going up and down that a little bit longer, about 2 or 3, gave me some headroom to do. I was able to transfer it over to the Garmin, and I got a couple messages on how to actually do that, but a lot of the head units do it pretty well here from Training Peaks. And some of the riders actually have done it over time, and that's how they're doing their workouts. They're switching them over to the Garmin. But it was a great workout outdoors too. Vo2 work is definitely nice outdoors, just because, hold on, as the train goes by, just because of the effort that you are doing outdoors. You can really just go all out and really push the pedals down hard. And a lot of times people can find that they can create that higher wattage when they are outdoors. With that, actually, I was talking to Taya right before the podcast here that I was doing the workout in the evening, and we were chatting a little bit about fueling. And we know that a lot of our lab riders actually do workouts in the evening. I just started experimenting with them recently. I don't typically do it. I am more of a morning person. I know Taya is the same. Ian, do you typically do workouts in the evening when you do double workouts, or do you do stack it all during the day?
No, it depends. I'll usually do one in the morning, one in the evening, or one in the morning, one at lunch, and one in the evening. Depends on what we've got for the day. If it's a brick workouts, they get stacked.
Got you. So with that, the conversation of how to fuel for that has kind of come up, and doing different things. So I know Taya had put a little bit together, and we can kind of all share our experiences with our athletes, kind of how they fuel. So yeah, with that, what did we kind of see in the lab, and what were they talking about there, Taya?
So you have a, let's say, full day at work, and we're talking 8-10 hours in the office or something else that you do. And you come home and it's early evening. So the question is, do I have dinner and do the workout later and then go to sleep, but then I'll be all wired up? Or what do I do? Do I work out on a banana, just do a banana and do the workout? So, I think ideally, of course, it depends on schedules and family schedules, but ideally, if you are able to do your workout before dinner, that would be best from a fueling perspective, but also from a perspective of being able to wind down a little bit before you go to bed. Because you do a high intensity workout at night and you have that feeling that you're still wired up, it's hard to switch off. And so to do the workout early in the evening, you have to start fueling for it or thinking about it already in the middle of your day. And so after lunch in that afternoon, just think about snacks that will be helpful and get you ready for that workout that you're going to do when you get home, and also that you're not starving. So you can have some complex carbs in that middle afternoon with some protein and a little bit of a fat, such as avocados or nut butter. And then right before the workout, you have something simple that can be quickly digested. And that might be, a bowl of rice with a little bit of eggs. Ian and Jason might have other ideas here of what you can do. It can be a banana or a good bar that you can do right before that evening workout to get you ready. And if it's a Vo2 workout, you need to make sure you have carbs on board. You've eaten simple carbs so you're able to go through that workout.
Yeah, personally, I'm a huge fan of the portables. Jason kind of turned me on to them a little bit, and my friend Deirdre did, and my wife's getting really good at making them, so I love them, and I found that they're a real good quick source of energy, but not quite spiky like a gel.
Yeah. So really, depending on the workout, I'm very similar. I typically prescribe something like a rice cake or rice, something simple if you're home. Rice. I steal one of my 5-year-old's applesauce squeeze packets and squeeze that on top of the rice. You get a little bit of glucose, you got the fructose, you got the 2 different sugar sources. That's good, like right when you get home. And if it is a tough workout, I'm not beyond doing a shot of real maple syrup, or honey's kind of tough. Maple syrup is pretty easy to do, like a little 1-ounce shot, and that will be good enough and be fast enough to get you the sugar that you need. And surprisingly, it's stuff you find at home. A lot of riders really find that it's easier on their stomach. Gels have not a lot. I want to say some gels have very complex carbohydrates that your body does need to break down, and more of the concern with gut issues after long periods of time. But I like to use the jet fuel. I like to call it for when you need that last bit, in that final bit of that big race or that big ride. So having that available is good. But nighttime intense workouts like this, when it's the goal workout or the key workout of the day versus just a second workout of the day where you're just getting more, let's say, more work in with a little bit less intensity, you really need to make sure that we focus on getting the fuel in during the day, like Taya said, and then getting that little bit of spike as you would if you were awake before a workout in the morning and getting that going. What did you say your go-to was, Taya, before a night workout? Or, well, the one night workout that you did once?
Yeah, the one that I did one time a year and a half ago.
For your athletes, though, what do you like to recommend? Some of the same things that we're talking about here?
Yeah, some of the same things, but I actually like macro bars.
Okay.
I like macro bars, and I also like banana. I mash a banana, and then I mix in protein powder with it and a little bit of almond butter, and I make it into a paste, and I eat that.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of your shots of that. That looks actually pretty good, and it makes your own little thing there. That's very nice. All right, so with that, and talking about kind of getting the fueling in, kind of goes hand in hand and with our next section, which is in the feed zone, and we're going to talk a little bit about kind of making sure you're hydrated and why it's important. So a lot of times people talk about hydration and it's how it's the most important time and how much athletes should be drinking during exercises. Obviously, these are really important questions, but we all understand that our performance is really influenced by how we're hydrated. So starting is the key part. Obviously, we know that we should be drinking about anywhere from 1 bottle per hour or more, depending on how much that you actually perspire or are sweating. But what we want to talk about, or what I wanted to bring up, was how do we start ourselves making sure that we are hydrated the same way we would with all our other fuels. A lot of times we'll find drinking a strong electrolyte drink beforehand can optimize your hydration status before these long hydration days, but exactly how much should we be doing? So the thing about it is, or the idea behind it is once you have started sweating and your body is putting out or losing water, you are kind of on the run to make sure that you're putting water in. We're not looking for a 1-to-1 ratio, but in fact, what we want to do is make sure that we're getting the electrolyte loss and those things back into the body so that your body can perform, essentially. We don't necessarily need to fill it all back up during the workout, but afterwards we can do things that can help minimize or maximize your recovery, any damage afterwards. So just important to optimize that hydration. So there's been definitely, all kinds of studies that talk about how amateur athletes, were turning up at about 30% of athletes that were turning up to workouts or more, they were coming into the workout dehydrated, just without it in their head. So especially when we're training indoors, it's very, very important that you start hydrated. And when you do fail or workouts that maybe you are doing okay with, looking at your hydration status, looking at this, your cooling status in your room on your trainer, it's really important because we do a lot of our key workouts indoors. The thing about it is, as we do get to closer to big rides or races, these show, or at least what we find is that people tend to overcompensate on their big rides, but not on their everyday workouts. So I guess the emphasis on making sure they get their hydration right. But a lot of times people overcompensate in a way where they're just drinking so much water before a big event and not making sure, which is the electrolyte. And the thing about the electrolyte is, getting that balance in the body or in the drink so that it is absorbed properly into the body. When there is an electrolyte on board, there's a lot of science behind it, but kind of the top-down look from it is that the body is able to identify the water as something that it needs, and it will bring the water in versus hold the water and essentially give yourself like a big water belly, or just hold the water until it's actually put out and you're headed to the porta potty or to the restroom several times. And that's one way you could tell if your body in fact is taking in the water or if it's holding onto the water and if the electrolyte level needs to be adjusted. So it kind of goes hand in hand with the carb loading, the way we do put fuel in for workouts like we just talked about, or for the big rides that we're doing. What do we do the night before? We want to increase that fluid intake to make sure that we're getting that amount in. So what level are we looking at? Is you're looking at making sure that you're having the right amount of sodium in these pre-exercise drinks, whether it be the night before or right before your workout. Obviously they've gone on the deep end as far as, going all the way to like NASA and this huge amount of like the 3,000 milligrams of getting it in. The problem was that people weren't able to do really much anything but sit in the bathroom, but they were really hydrated. So somewhere between nothing and 3,000 milligrams was essentially worked. But so what a couple companies have done is they've kind of backed off. So the measurement ends up being, for those guys that, for everyone who wants to do math, it's around 1,500 milligrams in 32 liters. So that's the ratio that actually works pretty well in endurance sports to make sure that that balance, when you take the amount of water that you are taking in, will get absorbed at that time. So having that electrolyte there. So just remember that number. It's about 1,500 for a 32 milliliter. Wait, am I getting that right? 1 liter, a 1 liter unit here. And so that's essentially how you preload or get the hydration in beforehand. So getting those concentrations, or just starting to get some electrolytes in with your water beforehand and see how you do with it is really important. So that's just the one thing I wanted to bring up here beforehand, getting it in and making sure that you have that hydration beforehand. And then we've talked a little bit about how to get it in during and shared our different experiences with that. But yeah, this is something that has come up with a lot of my athletes in the past, and something with these indoor workouts and the longer workouts on the weekend. It's important that we're thinking the day before, right before, making sure that we're getting that water in. And this is one way you can without getting an imbalance in the body. And so maybe some of the other coaches could. Yeah, go ahead, Ian.
That's what I always tell my athletes. Of if you're starting your hydration plan before, the day before the race, then you started about 3 days too late.
Yeah.
You got to definitely start earlier, because if you start later, all you end up doing is making a lot of trips to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And you're just dumping out what you put in. So you gotta start it early, and especially if it's a long race, if it's a long and hot race, you kind of need to pack that hydration capacity into your body, and it really takes 4 to 5 days to get everything ready for like one of those really long races. Like when we're doing the iron distance, when you're looking at a 9, 10, 12-hour day. And I know you don't know what that's like, Jason, but Taya does, because she's done longer stuff.
I work that long. Yeah.
But actually, that's a great point right there. The work is for those of us who are racing locally, and you're working all the way up until the day before race day. You have to focus, and maybe even set a little watch alarm to remember every 10 to 15 minutes, drink something, because I can tell you, I know from my experience, an hour and a half can go by so fast at work, and I've had nothing to drink.
Yeah.
And it gets you behind.
Yeah. So having this prepared days out is really important. And then the other thing, you need to kind of work out what works for you. Putting too much salt into these solutions can definitely put you the other way. And so one way you're going to find out is you're going to get like GI distress, meaning like your stomach's not going to feel well. You can get very loose. You could possibly get loose stool. You could also feel a lot of bloating and that sort of thing. And so we definitely have had experiences with that sort of thing, making sure, essentially finding that you having too much salt could also cause the opposite effect.
I certainly did that not too long ago. I tried this highly concentrated rescue hydration pack, and had one too many of those, and I was a camel. I was a camel. I was 5 pounds heavier with water.
I'm glad
my gloves were tight.
So we use those rescue packs like when people are heat stroke, heat exhaustion, like near death.
Never again.
And especially for someone like with the type of diet that you have, Taya, I'm glad you got my cue, because I didn't know if you wanted to share the story, but with the diet that you have that is actually pretty low in salt, I think just a very small amount could make a difference versus someone, let's say, who does a lot more, let's say, processed food. They may need a different level of salt to kind of make that balance happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's going to be, your mileage definitely may vary. And that's why it's great what we do. We're indoors, we have very controlled circumstances, and we can try things out and get hydrated. So not only should we be preparing bottles for during your workout, you should prepare for right after, you should prepare for through the days, and really trying to find that balance of what can help get you feeling balanced. And a little bit of salt goes a long way. There are prepared drinks. The article that I'm actually referring to, or that brought the information from you, was from Precision Hydration. So definitely check out precisionhydration.com. They've got a lot of good hydration advice, and they've got a lot of good prepared drinks that can make it a lot easier. They also have some sweat tests that you could do, both an online version that can give you an idea of how much that you need per hour, as well as a full-on sweat test. So those are both available, and it's definitely coming into vogue where riders are trying to figure out how much they're sweating, how much they need to put in to really maximize their performance, because really any decrease in your hydration status can affect your performance. So really you don't want to come into the end of a race 50% dehydrated. A couple percent, we find the fastest riders at that level, but not at a huge amount, 10, 15, 20% dehydrated. They're still trying to keep their hydration level kind of even there.
Like with tech, you cyclists are years behind. Us triathletes have been doing this for 5, 7 years.
You're right. It is. It is. It is. All right. So we've got a couple other topics here we're going to wrap out. I want to send it back over to Ian. We're going to talk a little bit about speed work and kind of the same sort of thing, fueling for our multi-sport event. So what have we got over there?
Yeah, so just real quick, talking about the fueling side of the house. We had a small discussion in the forum about feeding before the swim, especially in a race. And there's a lot of places out there that recommend having a gel before the swim. And honestly, I thought the same thing for years, and then until I did actually some reading, and then I found out that that's a cosmopolitan type version of advice. That's the top 10 things to make your swim faster type things that actually don't really mean much. When you put a gel in your body before the swim, it's really important to understand the dynamics of putting a sugar, basically a base sugar, into your body. You're going to have an insulin spike kicking in at the same time your adrenaline is kicking in, because you're in the aqua mixed martial arts fight again. So you're really not going to get any good positive benefit out of that. If you eat properly before the race and give yourself a little time to digest it, you don't need any extra calories before the swim. You can get out of the swim and start eating. Other than short of an iron distance swim, which is 2.4 miles, and most of those are hour to hour and a half for most people. You're not going to burn through your calorie storage. You're not going to deplete yourself too much in that swim unless you go out like a crazy person. So I would argue that for most people, not everybody, taking a gel before the swim is not the best idea. You can take in some fluids. You can take in maybe nibble a little bit on a bar or something like that that's more complex. But I really think as long as you're fed properly up until about an hour before race start, you don't need any additional calories before you get into the swim. And then taking a sugar, very much of a base sugar type product, is not going to be anything but disappointing, because your body spikes up and it's going to crash back down. So definitely want to really think about that before you do it. I know it's in most of and I'm not going to mention their names, but most of the different magazines that you see out there that, like I said, are Cosmo for triathletes. So really balance that out and really think about it. Second thing is, we talk about getting our body ready. It's not just in the nutrition side of it. For those of us who are north of about 25 to 27 years old, working out, doing speed work, and that's whether it's on the bike or the run or the swim, it means you have to give your body some time to get ready. For me, I found it takes a good 15 minutes of real good, solid warming up before I'm ready to put out any speed or power on the bike. So as we get into the run and the endurance labs, we're moving forward with the multi-sport side of the house. Really be cognizant of how warmed up your body is before you start trying to throw down, world record times in the 200 and 400. Just get everything warmed up. If your first few iterations are a little slower, that's okay. I found most people tend to go out fast in their first iteration or two, but really try and hold it back until your body's warmed up. Otherwise, you're going to pull things. You're going to create some injuries for yourself, especially if you have not done speed work in a long time. It's going to be pretty detrimental to moving forward, potentially. And then lastly, we're coming up at the end of the Spring Classic cobble season. So we have Paris-Roubaix this weekend. Mm-hmm. The reason I bring this up is for a lot of our riders out there, we're doing some of these harder intervals, these VO2 max, these recovery, these different workouts that mimic a lot of what the cobble classics are all about. The riders get on the front, they do these 5-10 minute hard effort, 20 minute solo breakaways off the front in Tour of Flanders. There are different things you're going to see. And if you watch what these riders do, you're going to see that a lot of what we are trying to do in the lab, this is actually represented in there. And you can see some of these techniques, some of the techniques we work on skills and drills, some of the things we talk about, skills for riding outside, they all come to play in these kind of races because they're not the typical stage race where it's just who's the better climber. This is about who's the better tactician, who's just mentally tougher. So this is a great race to watch if you can, especially, you can probably skip the first 80 or 100K, but once they get to the comment sections,
exactly.
It's amazing. It is absolutely just fireworks. It's way better than watching NASCAR, I promise. And it's amazing to watch. So definitely take a look at Paris-Roubaix this weekend. I think it's on NBC Sports.
Yeah. And it ends in the velodrome, which is awesome, which I guess is a little bit like NASCAR, everybody making lefts, but it's just an amazing finish. It's just a crazy climb up, one right-hand turn, and then it dumps into the velodrome, and they just go at it. It's an amazing. If you have a chance or catch a replay, look for it on YouTube, whatever it is, just catch it. If you're a cyclist and don't watch too much, definitely check it.
And if you just like carnage, this is also your race to watch.
That's true. It's not your typical race. You are right. All right. So let's take a look a little bit about. Oh no, we have one more section. Excuse me. I want to talk about our lab rat of the week. Taya, who is it this week?
Reshma is our lab rat of the week. Reshma this is her third consecutive lab, and she has been learning so much. She's fairly new to structure training, and in the course of the 3 labs, she got a new bike for the trainer. She got all set up and just really absorbing all the information like a sponge. She's been very active in the forum. You might not see a lot of messages from her, but she is an avid reader of the forum. And we do have a little bit of back-to-back, sometimes offline on things because she's managing so much in her life with work and kids and just like all of us, right, really, or most of us anyway, and really making a lot of progress and a recent FTP increase, but really getting it all in and learning a ton from all the interactions that we have in the forum.
Yeah, definitely seen some posts there, and I know there's a lot of interaction. We've got a lot of riders just like this, really getting breakthroughs, understanding what structured training can do for them. But yes, my applause goes to her. She's definitely engaged and getting a lot out of this, and our lab riders as well. So great job to everyone.
I'm glad she's also a member of the N+1 club too.
Yeah, it's always nice. Trainer getting that trainer bike is still pretty cool. Like to not have to put a bike on, and then get ready and then take it off to be able to go outdoors. It's tough. So having that is definitely an addition. Less excuses, right?
That's right.
All right, so let's take a peek on the horizon. What have we got going on this next week? What's happening? What are we doing? Are we gonna get some rest for these legs, Taya?
So week 3 is a recovery week, which means we bring our work down, not necessarily in terms of no intensity work, but in terms of your total stress for the week. We still have 3 workouts in there. We have a high cadence drills workout. We have a Vo2 spin-ups workout. That's going to be very similar to the last 2 blocks of the Vo2 workouts that we did this week, but only that all the blocks will be sort of the same. So you get some good work to keep that system awake throughout that recovery week without too much stress on your legs. And then we have a time trial type workout. That one is good, of course, for people who are planning on doing time trials this season, but also excellent for all the riders to develop that muscular endurance. So those are the 3 main workouts. The other days, bike-wise, you are free to take them off. You see that in the schedule. You have optional easy rides to spin it out. It's important that you take that rest because we want to really be fresh for when it matters.
Absolutely. And Ian, on the multi-sport side, what do we got going on in this third week?
Yeah, so we're dialed down a little bit as well, but we have a touch of intensity on our swims. We're looking at just a 2,000 straight, so 2,000 meters, 2,000 yards, depending on your pool. Nice relaxed pace. Try to negative split it, but again, it's more focused on something you can train your body for that longer swim, but we're not looking for a lot of intensity. And then later in the week, we have a recovery ladder, so it'll have a couple intense or harder intervals, but for the most part, it dies off and it becomes fairly easy. It's just about getting the arms moving and shaking things out of the body. And on the run side, we have our first bit of speed work, but it's a fairly light speed session. It's a 6 by 400, which is a 400 of running and then a 400 of mix of walk, slow jog, building back into it. So it's a lot of recovery, but just enough that you can kind of knock the dust out of your legs, since this is our first real speed work. And then a nice long, slow run on Sunday if they can get to it.
Very cool. So we are going to dial the intensity back just a little bit on everybody, but still working on those skills today. So that's what we've got here from the Coach's Corner. I want to thank everybody for joining in. I know it's really dense. Go back and listen to some of those. There's a lot of nuggets in there that can really bring more to your training. I want to thank everybody who has engaged themselves in the forum. And if you haven't gotten in there, jump in, introduce yourself, get involved with the conversations. That's what we're there for. The coaches are there. They're reading, they're watching, they're responding. So definitely take advantage of that. So with that, I want to say thanks for everyone tuning in. And don't forget, you can subscribe to this podcast both on YouTube, search for The Endurance Lab, as well as your favorite podcast app. Just go ahead to your favorite podcast app and search The Endurance Lab as well. So for today, myself, Jason, Taya, and Ian, thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week in the Coach's Corner.